Hello everyone, welcome to Sharmit. In this session, we are going to discuss about another very important topic of Angular, that is Angular form states comparison. If you remember, in our previous session, we individually discussed the examples for each like pristine, dirty, touched, untouched, valid, invalid, pending and disabled. So we discussed the example individually, but I think now it's time to see the differences between all these states. Why? Because in interviews you might be asked with these questions like what is the difference between dirty and pristine, what is the difference between touched and untouched. So in that situation you should know about the differences. So by the end of this session you will be able to understand what is a state, what is the opposite state, and when it will become true and when it will become false. Additionally, we will also discuss the ways through which we can trigger these states. Okay, so by the end of the session you will be able to understand the complete differences between all possible states of Angular form. But before we proceed further with this session, I would like to recommend you to please go and check out the previously released sessions first, because they all are in proper sequence and sync. So if you follow it sequentially, then it would be much more easier for you to understand the ongoing topic, because for time being we are just mainly focusing on how to understand the differences between the different Angular form state. But prior to that you should know what is pristine, what is dirty, and all these things along with the example that we covered earlier, right? Because right now we are not covering the example, we are just discussing the differences. Clear? Okay. Alright, so I think now we are good to start the session. And just one thing, like for the continuous and sequential content, you can also refer the Sharmit digital coursebook, which is freely available in the description box. There you can find more than 3000 plus free resources, and it is available in both Hindi as well as English language. So as per your convenience, you can go through it. Okay. Alright. So now we are good to start the session. Here you can see currently I'm in app.component.html file, where my main heading is Angular course by Sharmit, and secondary heading is template driven form example in Angular form states comparison chart. Okay, now look at this chart. We have multiple column. First column will indicate the current state, like what is the state, right? Second column will tell us the opposite of the state which is present in this column, first column. So this is the opposite. For example, if we are talking about pristine, so opposite is dirty. Third column will tell us when this state will become true. Okay, so what are the condition when it turned the true indicator on. Then we have fourth column, which will tell us when it become false. So what are the scenarios where this state will become the false. And then we have last column, that is triggered by. So this is the column which will tell those situations, those scenarios where which will trigger this kind of state. Okay, so these are the all columns and values that we noted down here. Now what I'll do, I'll one by one explain you the rows one by one. So let's see pristine first. So pristine is a state. The opposite of pristine state is dirty. Now question comes, when the pristine become true. So it become true when the control value has never changed. Okay, so if the control value has never changed, then in that case in pristine state will get turned on as true. Similarly, if someone asks you when it becomes false, so you can say that user changes the value. So whenever user changes the value, it will become false. And if we talk about the triggering scenarios, so yes, in the case of value change or typing, it will get triggered. So this is all about the pristine. Now the next is dirty. The opposite of the dirty state is pristine again, because these are vice versa thing. And when it becomes true when user modifies the value. So whenever user modifies the value, it becomes dirty. Then we have when it become false. So in the initial load, like for the very first time when you load the application, at that time it will become the false. Next is triggered by. So yes, of course, like when you start typing in it, then in that case it will change the value and then it will be triggered. Next thing is untouched. What is untouched? Untouched is again a state, and the opposite of untouched is touched. So it become true when the control never receive a focus. Okay, so in that case only it will become true. And when it become false, when the focus plus blur happened. Now what is blur? Suppose you click in the input field and you didn't type anything, and then you came outside of the input field and click there, so you can consider that thing as blurring. Okay, so focus plus blur happened, then it becomes false, and the triggering thing is focus event. So when you put the field in focus, then in that case it will be triggered. Next we have touched. Touched is a state and opposite is untouched. So it when it become true, it controls received focus and the loss. Okay, so it controls receive focus and the lost it. Okay, and when it become false, before the blur. So if you didn't blur the thing, then in that case it will become false. Now we have triggering thing. It is again focus plus blur. So when you put it in focus plus blur, it will be triggered. Next we have valid. So as its name suggests, you can see valid is the opposite of invalid, where it will check for the all validators. So if all the validations are passed, then in that case it will become true. If any of the validation is failed, then in that case it become failed. Okay, now the situation is quite clear that it will be triggered on the basis of validation itself. If validation is triggering, validation is proper, all things are passed, then it will become true, otherwise it will become false. Okay, next we have invalid state. So in case of invalid state, the opposite is valid. So you can say that when it become true, at least one validator fails. So suppose we have applied multiple validation like min number, max number, min length, max length, and required. So if any of the one validator is failed, so in that case it will become true. If all the validators are passed, then in that case it will become pass. And again we can say that it is triggered by the validation itself. So I think a valid, invalid, or it is really very easy if you learn these things in comparison. That's why like we covered the example also in a comparison way. We discussed dirty and pristine, we discussed touched, untouched, valid, invalid, right? So it will help you better to understand the requirement and conditions. Then we have 19th row, which tell us about pending. So there is no opposite state for pending, but it is a state that will become true when async validator is running. So if till the async validator is running, it will be acting as a true. When it become false, async validate when the async validation is complete. So when the async validation is completed, then it will become false. So you can say async validation is triggered by async validation is a pending. Okay, then we have disabled. So disable is a state, we have opposite as enabled. So you can say it's a both. That's why I didn't mention about enable, because it will clear you from this example, this line also itself. So when it becomes true, control is disabled. Okay, so when control is disabled, it will become true. When control is enabled, it becomes false. And what are the triggering condition? Of course, programmatic. When you start writing the programs, it will become as per conditional, it will become true, otherwise it will become false. Okay, so these are the all possible states and examples that we should know before we apply for the interviews or exam, because this table will for sure help you to answer the question that comes along your way over the Angular's form state. So I hope this session is clear to all of you. Still, if you think there is any particular question, queries, suggestion related to this session or maybe related to any other playlist, please feel free to reach out to me through comment section. I would be more than happy to answer all your questions. And meanwhile, you can do the practice. How you will do the practice? Just go through each and every example of these things which we had discussed earlier, like try to find out how the pristine value changed, how dirty value changed, untouched, touched, valid, invalid, pending, disable. Once example is clear, then you can try to understand the differences by watching this session again. Clear? So yeah, that's all for today. See you in the next session with new topics. So thank you for watching Tech Sharmit.